Hello, and welcome to Nerd Reviews Episode 1. Today we're looking at a game released by Konami. That game is Gradius III for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Now, this game is rather interesting to me because generally it is given grief for two seemingly polar opposite reasons. Today in this video, I'd like to really inspect those two arguments and see if either side really, has merit. And then I would also like to fully dissect the game, its history, and its accompanying documents. At the end of the video, I'd like to divulge my sincerest thoughts and let you know, is this game still worth buying today? Especially if you haven't played it before. Alright, without further ado, let's get into it. It is September of 1991. The Super Soaker was just released and school had just started. Life was good. To add to all of this, Nintendo had just released a brand new super thing of their own, the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, which would later be notably referred to as the SNES or simply the SNES. The SNES was competing with the Sega Genesis, which had been released 2 years previous in 1989. To come out strong, Nintendo had some impactful games presented in the initial release, including Super Mario World, F-Zero, and Gradius III. With an initial lineup like that, I am sure that homework was not being done, and sleepovers were full of late-night gaming sessions. The Gradius lineup may not be anywhere near as recognizable as the other release series mentioned, but Konami was well established in the game development scene by 1991, by already creating series such as Castlevania and Contra. Now, it's worth mentioning that fans of the NES may have played the first Gradius, but had probably never heard of Gradius II, mainly because it was a Famicom-only release. I respect Konami and Nintendo for keeping the numbering system the same both overseas and in North America, to avoid the confusing numbering scheme that has happened in other game series. But I did wonder for quite a while what had happened to Gradius II until I had full internet capabilities at my disposal. For those unfamiliar with Gradius III, it is a side-scrolling space shooter, where the player is looking to destroy anything and everything on screen at any given time. In order to accomplish this task, the contender of the villainous intergalactic foe is going to need some powerful weaponry available. This choice of firepower is to be made on either one of the weapon select screens, which are conveniently available before the start of the game or after the player chooses to use a continue. There is a type select mode, where the player can choose from one of 4 pre-constructed weapon sets and a shield. There is also the edit mode, where a player can choose each individual element of their arsenal along with 2 additional shields from the type select mode, and the selection of a super bonus weapon. Every full weapon array is going to provide the player with a speed up, a missile, a double, a laser, an option, a shield, which the game refers to as a question mark, and some form of super special weapon, which the game refers to as an exclamation point. Any fans of the Gradius series up until this point would probably consider the type select mode classic mode, and the edit mode a new development in the series. The large amount of available selections is innovative for the time period, and hints at some of the vast customization features present in modern games. Players can pick and choose their layout, to best suit their playstyle. It should be mentioned that there are some weapons present in the type select mode that are not available in the edit mode, and vice versa. My suggestion would be to use the edit mode, as to be honest I think that almost all of the type select options are inferior for what the game challenges the player with. Right about now, you may be curious if I am going to mention the arcade version of Gradius III, and to be honest the answer is not really. They are completely different games in my mind, and I may cover that one at a later time. That being said, in attempting to emulate what was done in the arcade cabinet game, the developers had to get creative. This creativity and thoughtfulness led to something that I would not really state about titles from this same genre, and that is that it has interesting level design. Let's break down each level to spot some of the more creative aspects of this game. Each level has a segue, where the player has a chance to collect some red power orbs before they are landlocked within the checkpoint confines of a planet. This is a bless and a curse, because sometimes these will throw a curveball your way, and may provide for unexpected difficulties. The first level reached is the Dunes of Doom. It has some finer elements, and I think does well as a level 1 stage. The Sand Dragon, or Serpentine enemy, is great to have here, because it is a really interesting and large enemy. This level also teaches new players that they will definitely have to deal with enemies on both the top and bottom of the screen. The first boss the player comes to is Earwig Scorpion. The second planet is the Carbonation Zone. Big ass bubbles and the first introduction to the option stealing enemy lead this level to greatly progress the player into understanding more about the game. There is also a secret stage accessible near the end, which is the one that I think most people are familiar with. If you opt instead to take on the boss, you will be fighting Bubble Brain. The gelatinous boss will be cut into a horseshoe shape as you shoot at its eye. This always led me to think as a kid that the boss was a magnet, because it slowly comes towards the player if not harmed. Lava Them and Leave Them Zone is the next arrival for the Gradian protagonist. Fans of the original game will appreciate this level being a throwback. This area has some fascinating design in my opinion, with a vertical scrolling section leading the player to an underground cavern full of mud, falling rocks, and plenty of enemies to deal with. Dying here is an extremely painful place to lose one's power-ups. There's a secret found right before the mud portion, requiring the player to destroy all of the enemy launchers, which shoot out schools of the enemy vector before this point. I know that everything in Nintendo Power and all of the websites and FAQs online say you have to destroy all the enemies on the ground up until this section. Well, just trust me, they are wrong. You can certainly leave some critters crawling about to reach this secret. Players challenging the boss will be greeted by QB2B, the first mechanized boss in the game. Watch out, as it traps your ship between two giant lasers. This boss is a classic of the series. A staple in the Gradius universe is an Easter Island-based level, and the Gradius III interpretation does not disappoint. It is called the Pop Rock Monolith Zone. The continuous vertical scrolling in this level is fascinating, as it can confuse new players into thinking the level infinitely scrolls, instead of having a definite loop point. I also think that the monolith totems near the end of the stage are great and provide an awesome graphical experience. I am not sure if this game uses Mode 7 at any point, but if it does, I believe this would be the only time. Two bosses await the player, with them collectively donning the title of Mega Monolith. Although not a fantastically challenging enemy, I really like that the player is threatened by the level in addition to the boss. Each time one of the heads is hurt, an earthquake happens. There is yet another secret stage to be accessed here, around the midpoint. The next stage, Light My Fire Zone, is my least favorite, and it seems like the developers just really wanted to have one more stage at the end of development. It is by far the shortest stage in the game, with reused level elements, and hell, even the sprites for the boss, the two-headed Scorch Serpent, are just the sand dragons reskinned from the first level. A secret area is available here, which I think is more enjoyable than the actual level. Continuing on, we reach Stage 6, Bacterion's Garden. A great stage with some awesome music. There are some reskins of certain enemies in this level, as well as some new ones introduced here that make this segment a sign of things to come, with many new enemies being introduced from this point forward. The boss, Bulbous, is, let's say, interestingly designed. Some people think that this boss seems to have an interesting shape, and the name sort of coincides with that. I think that the boss was based on a Venus flytrap. The fight is a nice challenge, especially on higher difficulties, as it requires quick decisions, and some players may want to increase their number of speed-ups here. 2 speed-ups is sufficient for this boss, and the entire game, so I generally just always have 2. After beating the dick out of the previous boss, we swiftly move to the next level, the Greased Lightning Round. I love this level and its movement, as it has you picking different routes to make your way through. It truly feels like a high-speed course, especially with trying to race through those yellow gates, and the fact that 2 speed-ups are required for this level. The final secret stage is accessed here, which I have to imagine was at least discovered accidentally by a decent amount of players on their first try of this level. The boss is Beacon, which although simple, has a really fun sequence with it throwing out blue orbs that seem to exactly resemble its cores. Now it's on to the boss rush. The intermediary element between the high-speed round and the boss rush is different than all the rest, as it is just a giant swarm of enemies that first drop red power orbs and then are just of the regular flavor. This part can be frustrating because generally I have my setup just the way I want it, and don't want to collect any more power orbs. It's not that difficult though. The first boss of the boss rush appears, and its name is Death Mark II. This boss is not really difficult, as long as you know to avoid the giant laser that comes out in the second phase of the fight. On to the next one. What would its name be? I can see it's made of ice, so it must be something ice related. Wait, its name is Monarch? What's the next one's name? Ice. Hold up. Alright, it's about time we need to discuss the manual for this game, because it has some questionable things in it. As for what I'm discussing, simply take a look at this image. Okay, you can see what I'm looking at. Do you think that the boss, that totally looks symmetrical, and has bug-like antennas as well as a pattern, sort of like a butterfly, is called Ice? And that the boss that is made out of ice crystals, and whose core is the only one in the entire game that looks like it is frozen, is called Monarch? Even the Gradius Wiki, which was made by people way more into Gradius than myself, said that the ice boss is Monarch in this game. This is an obvious typo, but perhaps it's the only one. Let's see what other insights we can gain from the manual. Gradius III, The Outbreak. What? I've been playing this game since my memory has formed, and have never heard this game referred to as this. I mean, the cartridge, the game, the front of the manual, not a single thing calls the game this. This must have been a last-minute change. What about the story? I mean, shoot-em-ups aren't exactly known for their story elements, but let's see what Konami put into this one. In the darkest quadrant of space, there churns the vortex of bad vibes? What in the hell? Was this written by a tarot card reader or something? A day would come when the evil beast would be unleashed after eons of being kept at bay, inflicting a slow and painful death on the entire galaxy. Holy shit! At first this thing just gives you bad juju and now it's gonna kill the entire galaxy? Another problem I have here is the name of your ship. It's the Vic Viper, right? Everyone calls it the Vic Viper. No, instead it's Max, the Modulated Artillery Exalter. How much does it cost, you wonder? $100 zillion. Are you kidding me? $100 zillion. I know this is written for children, but that is pandering of the lowest form. The big things that you fight at the end of each level, they're bosses, right? No. According to this, they're mayors. Also, it says that after beating a mayor, you can access the secret bonus area. What are they talking about? The part between levels? I don't even know. As for the bosses, or mayors, they left some out. This is what they give you. They left out 3 bosses. Why? They couldn't have tacked one more page in this thing? Oh, and the enemy page is pretty terrible. Look at this. What, did they scan hand drawings into computer and then use negative art or something? The detail is terrible, and some of these things I don't even know what they were in the actual game. I tried translating the Japanese version of the manual using one of those apps that translates pictures to see if I could find some different information from the makers of the game. Well, I don't think that it worked well, although I have no way of knowing for sure. This image is an excerpt from that translation. Pause and give it a read if you want to see how terrible that went. Oh well. Back to the game. You complete the boss rush after facing Covered Core and Grim. I always thought that Grim looked like a baseball as a kid when it's wrapped up. On to the second to last stage, the Gauntlet. I always considered this 2 stages, but apparently it's just one long one. This is where the difficulty of the game really ramps up, with a lot of things that a first-time player will most certainly die from. The first boss is called Disrupt, or Gun Wall Mark II. It's basically a wall. This is a relatively easy boss, as long as you destroy the little guns, because their non-pattern based lasers can pose problems due to their speed. After blowing up the wall, you pass through the cavity left by it. I remember the first time I saw this, it was really cool. It was like you fight a boss, and then delve into its inner makings to destroy the things that ran it. That is how you make a really fascinating shoot-em-up level. Alright, last stage, Bacterion's Lair. This is a good peek on the difficulty of the game, where a death at any point will surely prove catastrophic. The entrance to this stage provides some enemies that are a callback to the original Gradius. The enemies stuck to the ground, terribly called Cankerzors, have been reskinned and are now called Yang, I guess. This entire level has a biological motif, and even the pink walls that you shoot through seem to be made from some form of biomass that quickly heals after being destroyed. I love this level, and the enemies seem to be like antibodies to me, keeping the final boss from dying. Once you reach the mayor of Angertown, Bacterion, he is a pushover. This is expected and normal for games from this series. The fact that he is capable of harming you at all is actually surprising. He also has a badass theme. Defeating Bacterion, the game is complete. But wait, there is so much more. You see, this game loops upon beating it. That is where the game gets interesting to me. I have perhaps played it too much, and I no longer find difficulty on any of the selectable difficulties. It is the loops that will provide challenges to more experienced players, and one game can certainly extend for many hours, as long as the player's focus can stay as tightly concentrated as one of the Viper's lasers. When people talk about this game, they generally bring up the arcade difficulty. This is not really a huge secret, as the game tells you how to unlock it after beating it in hard mode. The game is not really that much more difficult on arcade difficulty, with only a few real surprises thrown in, such as these rocks not being destroyable, and these enemies not being killable. There is also a terribly written surprise for the player that beats the game on arcade. I didn't even know what appellation meant before seeing this for the first time. What it is trying to say is, wow, you're good, we can't throw anything else at you, you have earned the title of Technical Monkey. Technical Monkey here is like being a code monkey, but at a technical thing. Now, if you want a real challenge, select any difficulty and beat the game a couple times in a row without resetting. By the third loop, it will be understood what this game can truly throw at a player. When recording footage for this video, I just wanted to play through the game without cheating until I naturally died. I didn't get my best score, but I did pretty well. If you see the lives at the top of the screen, those are genuinely earned. So I'm unstoppable, right? No. If you want to see what a death can do in the game, check this out. I died here, and then was determined to figure out how to make it through the rest of the level with limited power-ups. This is where players will be challenged most, learning these small sequences until they become powered up again. Let me fast forward here. So how many lives did it take? That's over half an hour just in this one spot. However, I will state that each loop is really most difficult at the very beginning, as long as you can survive the rest of the loop without dying. Why is this? Well, there is an elephant in the room I have refrained from mentioning this entire time, and it is the root of the impossible argument that I brought up at the beginning of this episode. It is slowdown. Yes, this game experiences an extreme amount of slowdown. At times it becomes almost comically slow. It is just a fact, and it stems from a limitation of developer knowledge, as well as a limitation of the hardware at the time of Gradius III's development. The impossible argument lies in this. Whenever I see a review of this game, it often goes like so. Great music, big boss battles, interesting levels. Slowdown makes it too easy. The game is too hard. Okay, the main points I want to focus on are the last two. People complain about slowdown, which makes it easy and possible to navigate through certain areas of the first playthrough. Then they complain that dying makes the game too hard. This is a paradox of an argument. If slowdown makes the game easy, and that's a bad thing, but dying makes the game hard, and that's a bad thing, then maybe game types like this just aren't for you. I tried reaching out to the only developer of this game that I could find a lead to see if I could ask him some questions, but he never got back to me. So instead, I will have to make a few assumptions. I assume that the developers knew about the hardware limitations and knew about the slowdown during the process of making the game. I believe that they tailored the difficulty to match the slowdown, where it is present, and to match it where it isn't present. Now, this does mean that dying in an area where the developers meant for there to be slowdown will raise the difficulty of the game, but that is part of the fun. It is learning to rise to each occasion, whether it be slow or fast. Keep in mind that Konami just finished the arcade version of Gradius III, maybe one of the most difficult and frustrating arcade games ever, and were probably instructed that they better not make the SNES port so hard, because Konami probably lost tons of money on the arcade version. So this is the version that the developers meant to release, and it is as good as they could have made it at the time. For me, honestly, Gradius III has some of the best graphics of any shoot-'em-up game on the SNES. Sometimes they get glitchy, but when you are there facing down a gargantuan boss with great details, man, it empowers you when you defeat them. You see, other shoot-'em-ups on the SNES were more optimized, and this means that they had less detail. In Gradius III, I love the little details, and I love that the developers were willing to sacrifice some playability to have their vision come across. The music is certainly worth talking about. This is some of the best music to come from the SNES, and is extremely impressive as being one of the earlier releases, as it has custom instruments and many things that would not be repeated until later down the road for SNES releases. I could talk about the music for a long time, but I will take one of my favorite tracks from the game and play a short sample for you here. Being the music for the high speed zone, this composition perfectly embodies high speed. It has that emulation of slowdown at the beginning, and then it hits the listener with an intense rocket blast of feeling fast. There is a huge amount of thought put into a composition like this, and it is executed perfectly. The same can be said for nearly every other stage. I do have some gripes about the game, such as how some of the power-ups are really terrible. For instance, the regular options shouldn't be in a game where vertical scrolling is an important aspect, and the front shields and rotating shields may take a lot of hits, but they just get hit all the time because of the giant hitboxes. Really, the only shield worth getting is the reduced shield, because it shrinks the player's hitbox to a level that maneuverability is absolutely fantastic. The only thing that I wish I could truly change about the game is the slowdown. I have said for years that I just wish I could play the game at full speed, just to see what it's like, and I know that Konami will probably never release this game ever again. It seems I will never be able to play it in a perfect form. But now I can! Oh yeah! The brilliant ROM hacker Vitor Vilela of SNES Lab was able to make a patch for this game that utilizes the SA1 chip, making the game play at full speed all the time. This is unbelievably cool. This will make masters of this game look at it in a brand new light, and for those that complained about the slowdown for so long, give it a shot now. It's pretty challenging. What I love is that I no longer have to play the game for 2 hours before it's hard. I can simply fire up the game, put it on hard or arcade, and have a tough time. For new players, I really don't suggest this version for you, but if you want to try it out, play on normal or easy. I played through this SA1 enhanced version on the arcade difficulty, which I will upload as its own video, just so others can see what it is like. I knew I could get through the regular run-through of the game, but just for kicks I wanted to see what Loop 1 looked like, so I cheated my ass off to get through that. Here are some of my favorite moments, along with my genuine reaction.
What? How did I make it through that?
Oh yeah, there are cheats in this game. I won't dwell on these, but for new players, pause the game, input the Konami code we all know and love, unpause, and something really cool happens. There are some more, but try this one first. So, how would I describe playing Gradius III? Being a musician, I think it is a lost opportunity that game developers never talk about the improvisation required to play certain games. Some have an extremely linear path in which there is only one real way out. This is like playing a classic rock song. You really have to play it the way it was written. Other games are all about online play or randomization. This is like playing in a jazz group from the bebop era, with experimentation being the route to being successful. Now, Gradius III is not like either of those. It has elements of both. Playing Gradius III is like playing a Bach cello suite. It requires intense practice and learning. It requires the knowledge and understanding of when to move and shift and when to stay still. Gradius III is not a game for everyone. It doesn't try to be, and if you don't like it, it's not for you. The game isn't perfect, but it has a hell of a lot of character. Do I think you should bother buying the game today, even if you haven't played it before? Yeah. It's going to cost you between $6 and $20 at a game dealer, and it's worthy of being in any collection. For anyone playing on original hardware that hasn't played it, give it a try. This is a game made for lovers of challenge and difficulty. So, if you're looking for a simple story-driven game to sit down and play for a couple hours, I would steer clear. Therefore, I give Gradius III for the SNES 85 yangs out of 100. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Please, remember to like and subscribe below if you enjoyed the video. Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out my first video. I'm looking to do more things like this from now on. If you could just please, give me some insight down in the comments below. Let me know what games would you like me to check out. What other things might you like to see a channel do? Since I am young in my YouTubing, I'm willing to try stuff. One thing I would like to do is with every game that I review, I would really like to do a challenge along with it. So for Gradius III, for instance, I'm going to play through it and see what's the fewest amount of enemies you can kill in the game and still beat it. There's some really interesting stuff with that, but I won't let you know because that's spoilers. And then as far as the games that I can play and review, really right now I'm limited to Super Nintendo and PC. So modern games on the PC, and I can play pretty much any game on the Super Nintendo. So really that's because of my capture card. I just have one it's the GV USB 2, if you happen to know what that is. It's really not made for anything, PS4, it's not made for anything really modern. So that's what I'm looking to do. On onwards and upwards. The next game, I don't know. You guys give me a suggestion. I was wanting to do Super Mario World at some time. That game is really cool to me. But let me know. They don't have to be popular. They don't have to be good. If I'm doing reviews, it would probably be better if I did some bad things. So just let me know. I was streaming for a while on Twitch, but nobody really watched me. So if you guys would be interested in watching me gameplay video for these reviews, then let me know and maybe I'll start doing that. All right. Well, thank you again, and see you guys in the next one.